And so I have to find the back door to my ego and tell myself, even if I don't learn anything from them, I'm paying them $20,000 to just get myself to do it, which will get me the result, and it'll be nice to have a friend along the way.
And if you iterate through that circle and that cycle, I call it the virtuous cycle. If you go through that 100 times, you're going to be a lot better. If you go through it 1,000 times, you're going to be on track to being an outlier in status.
This is the Coaches Council, made up of 6 elite coaches dedicated to serving and ending personal struggle for high performers in business, health, and relationships. As a collective, we have built and helped build 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses, dominate in multiple industries, coached and played in professional sports leagues, and developed some of the strongest and most intimate relationships, both professional and personal. This isn't your average podcast. It's for the hungry, the dedicated, the doers, for those that have a dream and truly want that dream to become reality. People who want to take action, leave their ego at the door, and own every level of their life. If that's you, then step into the Coaches Council as we rewrite the truths to living that high performance life.
Welcome back to another week of the Coaches Council. Craig, Pradeep, John, great to see ya. Salutations. Boom, boom,
Happy
boom.
to be here, as always.
I love it. Well, we all know our best friend and fellow coach Drew Manning is busy getting his weight on, and our other coach that isn't here, Brian, is busy getting a nice award and presenting at a major conference virtually. So always a lot on the go. But today we're talking about roles of coaches and mentors. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what industry you're in. Every single person, I'm sure, has a story about a coach or a mentor or a teacher or somebody who helped shape them, somebody who helped guide them in the right direction, whether they knew they were going down the wrong path or not, and was this guiding light on where everyone ultimately needed to get to. So I want to know, and John, I would love to start with you. In the role of coaching, by definition, what do you see it being?
All right, I'm going to take a longer track to this. I think that there's a big definition between a delineation between a teacher, a coach, and a mentor. Teachers tend to be more hands-on. Then coaches, the way I see coaching play out, it's a lot of hand-holding. Teachers are not hands-on, rather. So a teacher is someone like Albus Dumbledore, if we're going to use some literary references, right? Dumbledore shows up, says some shit to Harry, and then boom, he's gone for like the rest of the movie. He comes back in at the end, and he's like, "Oh, Harry, you did a good job. Way to not die again." So that's really what a teacher is like. It's somebody who tells you what the information is, they teach you how to do it, and then they leave you to do it on your own. A coach is somebody who is more invested in you getting it done, and there's a lot of hand-holding, and they're still leading you along the way, and there's a lot of checking in and making sure and consistently correcting you. And then a mentor, the way I view that, is someone who is as invested in that relationship in terms of they get as much out of teaching you as you get out of learning, and you're co-creating the result together. And so I look at teaching more like Mr. Miyagi and Daniel-san, right? The experience that Miyagi has teaching Daniel how to beat Johnny Lawrence in the 1989 All-Valley Karate Tournament, which took place in the San Bernardino Valley on December 19th of that year, as everyone knows. Miyagi gets as much out of it as Daniel does after moving from New Jersey to California. That's a reference to The Karate Kid, for those of you who haven't seen one of the greatest movies of all time.
I'm just impressed you know all those details.
I was just going to say, yeah, I'm impressed you know all that names.
If anything worth doing is worth doing right. Nothing is worse to me than when people misquote movies. So I figure if I'm going to do it. So in between those
really, nothing in the history of all humankind is worse than when humans misquote movies. Nothing.
No form of referential comedy is worse than when people misquote movies.
That's a little more specific. Thank you.
Thanks for the correction. So if teaching is sort of giving someone the information and just like getting them off to do it, we can look at courses or even content creation as teaching. And then mentorship is really being deep in it with something co-creating. In between, in the middle of that Venn diagram, sits coaching, where you tell someone what to do and then you really checking in and making sure that they do it. And it is all three of those things are essentially getting people to where they want to go. But they're very different ways of executing that. And which one of those you need and which one of those you're good at depends the phase of your life you're at, the phase of your business, and the type of person that you are. Some of us do really well with coaching because that consistent accountability is necessary for them. Whereas someone like myself, I don't love being a coach. I like to be a teacher. I don't like checking in with people regularly. I want to tell you what to do and then like do it or don't. I don't know what the fuck to tell you. Just like do the shit. Craig is a great coach. He's really good at creating systems of accountability and making sure people are doing this stuff and also making sure that they have that within themselves. And so he kind of creates like obsolescence for himself in that way. And I look at all those three roles as essentially playing the same, ultimately leading people to the same goal, but they're very different ways of executing. And so all of them are important, but each of us is better at and will get more out of different ones.
The clarification there is key, and the differentiation really makes that much more clear as to where we're going. And I want to talk about it in two different ways. One, to the person seeking a coach, a mentor, a teacher. How do you know which one you truly need or who you should be targeting? And then the second is that entrepreneur, that business owner who is wanting to be a teacher or a mentor or a coach, and how you go down each one of those areas. And Craig, being obviously you being my coach, having coached many, many people, what type of people typically are reaching out to you that you find are most successful in a coaching program, and the characteristics that they could potentially have or the problems they may have that would better suit them to a teacher, coach, or a mentor?
I would say that a coaching client must be open to feedback. I had a recent experience with a gentleman in the trucking industry. I work with entrepreneurs in a lot of different worlds. And so he's in the trucking safety industry. He goes into trucking companies and does safety days of teaching because there's just a whole host of regulations that are always changing, and he teaches them. He started off, he was a conservative older gentleman. Okay. So a conservative older gentleman, you come from an era where being vulnerable, being willing to admit faults, being, asking for help is not, was kind of frowned upon, was not part of the culture. And for the first month of the program, he struggled and did not take my feedback as well as a younger person might take. I'm not really like sugarcoating feedback either. I'm not that type of person. So I can be a little bit rough around the edges for certain types of individuals. But he was a rough around the edges individual, but he just wasn't used to it. Now, he was not fortunate. He was smart enough, wise enough to evolve over time. And in the second month, he was like, okay, I get it. I see how this works. So that said is that you must be willing to set your ego aside. You must be open to feedback. You must understand that you're being corrected on behaviors, but it's not necessarily saying that you're a bad person or anything. Like nobody's perfect and everybody needs to improve. And one of the greatest stories I ever heard about coaching or getting better was, and I'm not exactly sure if this is 100% true, but U2 does a concert, then the next day they watch the concert. That's what I was told. And this is U2, like on their last tour. They're the greatest revenue producing tour band possibly of all time, but definitely was in the year that they were doing this. And they're still doing that. Now they're coaching themselves. Maybe there's somebody else in the room giving outside eyes. And that's what coaching is in a lot of cases, outside eyes on your performance and giving you feedback, whether it's a coach who's correcting your squatting form, or whether it's a coach like John correcting, if he did coaching on copywriting, correcting somebody's copywriting, or somebody correcting me on video, or somebody correcting me as a coach and a leader, which I've had some of my coaches do. That's it. You've got to be open to it. And so the people that are successful with coaching that improve to the greatest degree within what they're capable of doing are open to it. Then I basically would just say you get a kind of a loop. Like, you figure out where you are, your baseline is at the top, and then you go and you get expert advice, and then you go and take action and you get expert feedback, and then you're back with a new baseline. And if you iterate through that circle and that cycle, I call it the virtuous cycle. If you go through that 100 times, you're going to be a lot better. If you go through it 1,000 times, you're going to be on track to being an outlier in status, within your genetic and talent capabilities and your capacity. So those are the people that excel through coaching. And that doesn't necessarily mean that a person who gets coaching is guaranteed to have major success, because they may not have the right thinking, or they may not be, just because you get a coach doesn't mean you're going to become a multimillionaire, but it will help you improve personally. Because the one other thing I want to add on that is I've had a lot of people come through coaching programs, and if I had to bet on them, like, a person bets on horses to win a race, I would be wrong more times than I would be right. You will be surprised at who actually goes on to make the most money. You would think somebody with everything going for them. I've seen so many people come in, like, you're smart, you're good looking, which is helpful. You are articulate, but they can't, there's some e-break in their head where they actually need therapy and not coaching, which is probably a fourth element we could probably talk about here, which is outside of teaching, coaching, and mentoring. Sometimes people need therapy and not coaching, because it's beyond the scope of expertise of the coach to take the e-brake off their head. But then you have certain people that come in, and there's a person in my mind right now, and I thought, no way is this guy going to, make more than 150, 200 grand a year selling info products. And from the last I heard, his business was up to $70 million. And I would never bet on him.
Wow. And so I'm still curious. You said that in terms of betting on somebody, and a lot of people go into, let me go back. You said that you were talking about A, betting on somebody, but B, the way that they showed up. And this example of this guy that at the second month, he finally got it. What was it, or how am I trying to put this together? God.
Well, I would say, like, what was it that allowed him to do that is he had paid for 3 months. He had paid for 3 months. And so he was like, I got two options. And some people do take this first option of ghosting and vanishing. And it doesn't happen a lot, because I do follow up with people, because, as John mentioned, I have this system to follow up, and I want to see people succeed. But there are certain people who still get in the way of themselves, whether it's their ego, whether it's something in their head, whether it's insecurity, whether it's fear, whether it's doubt. Again, those people need therapy. There's people that need therapy in order to get the benefit of coaching. He didn't need therapy. He just needed to go, oh, this is not exactly what I expected. And I can either sulk off like a child whose football got stolen, or I can go, you know what? I'm gonna step into this. I'm gonna lean into this. I might not enjoy it like a cold shower, but like a cold shower, there will be benefits. And that's what he did, because he was committed in multiple ways.
How many times have people had to change their perspective in what's going on because they've showed up to a coach that they're paying and expecting them to put the work in and do the work and be the white knight riding up that's going to save the day?
I don't think that it's that common in coaching as much as it might be when hiring a copywriter, when hiring someone to do your Facebook ads. And I made that mistake. I have made that mistake multiple times that, oh, well, this person provides a professional service. I don't have to, make sure that anything's going to go wrong. And I'm just going to wipe my hands clean of it. I made that mistake. Bedros Keuilian has made that mistake. He has a famous story that he's told on one of our other shows about how he hired these two franchise attorneys. They were franchise consultants. Sorry, they were not attorneys. Okay, so he's paying these guys 25 grand a month. And after a few months, he starts to notice that anytime he asks these guys a question, all they did was provide information that could be found by Google. And so he would be like, I forget how he caught on to this. It might have been his wife, Diana, because, Diana's really the brains of that operation. And so he went down maybe a year, $250,000 in paying consultants because he made the mistake that he and I now warn people about, which is you cannot expect a woman or a man on a white horse, pony, donkey, snow leopard, anything to ride into your life, into your business and fix it. It is all your personal responsibility. So I don't believe it happens that much in coaching. And if it does happen in coaching, then shame on the coach for the promise that was made in advance. But in coaching, most people, because when you think, at least from my background, what's the average Craig Ballantyne going to think about a coach? He's going to think about a coach. A coach is the guy who tells me to go and run, or woman, who goes and tells me to run 8 200-meter sprints with 30 seconds in between, and I hope I don't puke. Like, a coach tells me to do hard work. And so I think that with coaching, people generally come in with the right expectation in terms of they're not doing the work for me. So I think that most people are making have the right attitude there. It's in some other areas that we are real tempted to abdicate responsibility.
Got it. And Pradeep, having been in the corporate setting, both as now a coach, but before as somebody working their way up to being that CEO, being that high performing individual, running a company, having other executives on your team, what do you see as the people in these differentiating factors, like John spoke about before, the coach, the mentor, the teacher, in being able to fit into that setting that can truly take you to that next level?
Well, I've been fortunate enough that I've always had good mentors and good coaches along the way. I think that's one of the big factors in terms of why I'm here doing what I'm doing. So I've been fortunate enough. So one of my old mentors actually taught me something really big. It was a good lesson. He said, you know what, if the mentor doesn't present himself or herself, you got to go out there and actively find the person. And so if it's not necessarily someone that you can buy their course, for example, I know a lot of people that just go out and reach out to people. Now, sometimes that can be annoying, but if you do it with the right approach, you can actually get a really good mentor on your side. I highly...
Hey, can I interrupt and tell a really cool story?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I recently saw Magic Johnson speak. I have been to countless seminars, and he is the best business speaker I've ever seen. Practical, funny, really great. And I mean, the guy is a sharp thinker. He had he signed a 25-year contract, and he had all these like really cool stories about how he was the first guy to do everything financially in the NBA. In his second year, he demanded the phone numbers of every person who had seasons tickets in the first 2 rows. And Jerry Buss gave him those phone numbers, and he called every single one of those individuals and took them out to lunch. And he ended up with 7 lifelong financial mentors from that. That is so cool.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. I love it. That's powerful. So if you actually actively go out, because I come across a lot of people that say, well, I don't, I can't find someone, or I can't afford it. That's one of the big things that I hear is sometimes there's people out there that will just help you, not necessarily for free, but there might be some other exchange that you can work out with them in some way, shape, or form. I know that I set aside a number of hours every week pro bono to help startups, to help new entrepreneurs, to help people, just because I enjoy doing it. I learn new things as well. So one of the things...
I'm going to interrupt again, Pradeep. Yep. Just on the can't afford it thing. If people have never heard of SCORE.org, it's the nation's largest network of volunteer expert business mentors. I don't have anything to do with them. I'd only heard about them, and I don't know anybody who's used it. But if you're sitting there and that is your excuse, and you live in Tupelo or wherever, Podunk, Idaho or something, Idaho, which is an actual state, according to this Canadian. And you live in one of those places, you're like, there's nobody here. I don't have the internet and I don't have any money. Well, you can get a hold of this score.org company with the internet that you don't have.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I'll have to check that out myself. With the internet, it's so easy to just connect with people and find mentors. People are willing to help. As a good mentor or a coach, for example, if it's an interesting person or interesting case, they might take it on for free because it might be an interesting scenario for them to learn something new as well. So there's always people out there willing to help. And I think that's the most important thing. Coming from the corporate world, one of the things that we implemented and I was very adamant about was the principle of mentoring, but so being mentored by someone and also mentoring someone else. So I think you become a great mentor, by being mentored yourself. You learn what it's like to be a mentee, right? Because everybody has those, and I'll just speak from experience. Sometimes that I've had some really cool mentors, some really awesome mentors, and I was a little bit afraid at first to reach out to them or have conversations with them because I didn't want these awesome people to think that I was a failure in some way, shape, or form. So I had to get over that myself. And so being a mentor, it's important to put yourself in the position of being a mentee because a lot of people that ask for coaching are feeling certain ways that we might not understand as coaches. So that's important to pay attention to as well. Just on a side note, I think it depends. As a coach or as someone that's being coached or looking for a coach, I think the biggest thing for me is the fit. Because I've had some really, if I talk about the fitness industry, for example, I've had some really awesome fitness coaches and they've given me great workout programs and it was kind of like, hey, Pradeep, here you go. What's your goal? Let's figure it out. And then they'd send me stuff, but I didn't really feel that connection with them. I didn't feel like they were vested in it. I didn't feel like they really cared about my progress. And that's what I was looking for personally. I wanted the talent, I wanted the expertise, but I just wanted someone to connect with as well. And sometimes that's what people are looking for from a mentor or from a coach, is they just want someone there, for guidance. There's the accountability, but also that piece. And again, I've been fortunate enough to experience this. When someone sees something in you that you don't see in yourself, I think that is so powerful. And that's the best thing that people can do as mentors is when you have someone that's feeling down and out, you don't want to pump them up and with stuff that, they aren't qualified to do or skilled to do, but you want to at least believe in them because a lot of people get coaches or mentors because they don't believe in themselves.
That's such a great point, Pradeep, because a lot of people, and you made a couple of great points I'm going to go back to, but the first one is wanting to identify how you find that mentor and how you find that fit. And a lot of us know, a lot of being in the coaches industry and having coaches and mentors ourselves, I've had coaches that just didn't work for me. I've gone down the wrong path and it just hasn't worked. What is, for people out there searching for that right now, what is the first step that they can take to go and truly find what it is that they're looking for?
Well, if I was to say, I would say ask around. There's no better way to find a coach than actually asking around because, the power of the word of mouth is just so big. There's someone out there that knows the person that you need to get a hold of, or they know someone who knows somebody. So just ask. You'll be surprised. You can go, there's so many different ways. You can go into different Facebook groups. You can go into LinkedIn groups and find out. Ultimately, you're going to have to do your due diligence because the coaching and the consulting industry is one of the fastest growing industries in North America. It's blown up. I'm surprised to see how many people have come into it over the last couple of years. And no offense to some people, like Tony Robbins, I love the guy. I think he's got some great teachings, but I remember him saying, hey, look, you know what? He created the coaching industry. And I remember him saying that, in one of his workshops, he was saying that, people are becoming coaches overnight and fly by night. Well, now he's teaching coaches how to become professional coaches in 90 days, for example. So I see a lot of people coming up, and I'm not one to say that they shouldn't do that because I think we need more coaches out there. I think we need more expertise out there. But I also think that people that are looking for coaches need to do their due diligence because similar to what Craig was saying, I fell into this trap of, let's just say digital marketing. For example, I've gone through 5 different digital marketing agencies in 2 years. It's ridiculous. And I've paid a crap load of money to these guys and thinking that they're the experts, and they've had great reputations, but gotten very little results from me. And so what you said, I learned that the hard way too, where I just said, you know what, you're the experts, you guys deal with it, just give me updates. But there's just way too much of that happening. So do your due diligence, check for references, talk to the people that these coaches have helped so that you get firsthand knowledge and not just a testimonial on the website.
Absolutely. I've talked to people who said, yeah, there's a coach who has a testimonial from me on their website, and I've never said that. So it is interesting out there. It is a wild west, I guess you would say. Now, Pradeep, you and I can have a conversation about the digital marketing stuff. I can get you people that will help you really, really well. But I actually have 5. I've actually done this little shtick for a few years now. There's 5 points that I tell everybody in looking for a coach to go like this. You want to find somebody who's been there and done that and achieved what you want to achieve. Been there, done that, achieved what you want to achieve. Second is shares your morals and ethics, because somebody can get you, been there, done that, achieved what you want to achieve, but they might give you advice that doesn't sit well in your stomach and you can't sleep at night. So they must share your morals and ethics. The third thing is that you must have rapport with them. And that may mean that you have rapport with them. You've watched enough of their YouTube videos, not just one, but enough. It wasn't just a Facebook ad to an application, because you're not going to get rapport from them. Preferably you've been to an event, preferably that you've actually talked to them and maybe they're great on stage and they brush you off and you're like, oh, wait a minute, is this how it works in the coaching program? The fourth thing is reputation and referrals. You wouldn't hire, a financial advisor without asking for referrals, or without, preferably getting a recommendation from a friend. Don't go and invest in a coach if you haven't, as Pradeep said, reach out to the people. I love it when people say, well, can I talk to 2 or 3 of your clients? Because I'm like, I'd rather you talk to 2 or 3 of my clients. They will sell you better than I can sell you. I wouldn't say that, but I would say, yes, please. I will let people talk to former coaching clients that maybe had a good experience, but not the world's greatest experience. Because even those people will say, yes, Craig delivered on this. Maybe it just wasn't a good fit. And then finally, the fifth thing is something that people do not think about. And it kind of relates to what Pradeep was saying, maybe about the coach who gave him a great program, but maybe he didn't follow through on it. I know that I've been in coaching programs where I didn't follow through on it. And it's because I lack this fifth factor. You must hire a coach who you deeply do not want to disappoint. You must hire a coach who you deeply do not want to disappoint, because then when they say jump this high, you will jump this high and you will go back faster than they expect, asking for more. And you will be held accountable. You will do what you are told to do. You will stay on track if you deeply do not want to disappoint that person. And, I don't know how you find that person in particular, but as a coach, the way that you foster that relationship is that, you are vulnerable, you are authentic, you share your experiences, ups, downs, everything. You share what's working now, you treat people properly, and you just are consistent and not disappearing. And that's one way, but then also sharing a lot of the personal stuff. I have people that pay me a lot of money for coaching when they could get coaching from anybody, and someone as good or me, and maybe even someone more specific in their industry. But it's because I get up at a certain time of day, or I grew up on a farm, and they grew up on a farm, and they get up early in the morning, and that's why they choose me. That's why they choose me. It's not rational, but we are all looking for our mentor in one way, shape, or form. And maybe, some people's mentors may be from history. Some people's mentors may be from fiction. And some people may just be in awe of you because of one video you put out where you shared something that they're like, I do that too. I stutter. I did this. I grew up here. I was raised by a single mom who had to support 3 kids, just like this coach. This is the coach for me. And so when you do that type of stuff, you will develop the relationship. And this goes back to what I said before about you can't really bet on who will come out way far ahead after coaching, because you could get somebody with not as much talent and maybe not as much vision, but for some reason they are just attracted to a certain coach, and the coach is good, and the coach gives them enough information, and that person just goes and does more and more and more than any of the other coaching clients have ever done. And it doesn't make any sense that this person has become their most successful coaching client. You just never know. There are so many intangible factors in this beautiful thing that is coaching that you can't make predictions on it. But if you do follow those 5 things, which is find somebody who's been there, done that, achieve what you want to achieve, someone who shares your morals and ethics, someone who has good rapport with you, who has a good reputation and can give you referrals, and someone that you deeply do not want to disappoint. If you do the due diligence that Pradeep recommended, if you do the hard work of finding the right coach, the hard work might even be more up front of even hiring the coach, of figuring out who's the right coach for you. If you can do that, man, the opportunities and success that awaits you can be massive.
Yeah, Craig, awesome point. Just to touch on that part from the coaching perspective, because you just nailed it. As coaches, I don't know if a lot of coaches realize that people are buying them in a lot of ways. It's not their product. It's not necessarily the courses. It's them that they're connecting with individually. And so I've had that same experience as well, where someone's heard something in my podcast and been like, oh, you know what? I want you to take me on as a client. I'm like, why? Like, what else do you know based on this one podcast episode? So, take that into consideration, because I don't think enough people actually use that, because I see a lot of coaches and their strategies as well, and their marketing strategies, that they're focusing so much on you can say the sparkly stuff, right? All the bells and whistles, and they're forgetting the point that you just made, Craig, which is it's just about connection.
Yeah, John was the first guy I'd ever heard said that coaches by coaches, coaching clients by coaches, not coaching. I'm like, oh,
people,
that's well said.
The original quote was, people don't buy coaching, they buy coaches.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
But you're absolutely right. And to sort of use an analogy from the fitness industry, at the end of the day, people are interested in one of 3 things. As a coach or a service provider in the fitness industry, you help people look better, feel better, perform better. Some combination of those 3 things. And when it is an industry like health and fitness, the total amount of information that there is, it's huge, but the total amount of applicable information that it's smaller, and everybody is drawing water from that well. When Craig and I were both in the fitness industry, people could look at the 2 of us and wanted to look better, feel better, perform better. And although we had different approaches to providing the solutions to that problem, fundamentally, the result would have been the same. If they worked with me, they would have lost the 10 pounds they wanted. If they worked with Craig, they would have lost the 10 pounds they wanted. But very different people gravitated towards each of us. And it wasn't because of what we provided, but because of it was never the information, but rather the presentation. And the way that the things that I would speak about and were very different from the things Craig would speak about. People who were gravitating toward Craig because he grew up on a farm, or because he was Canadian, or because he doesn't drop F-bombs in his writing, or the people who would have gone to me because I was, a hyper aggressive New Yorker and I talk about Dungeons and Dragons or emo music or whatever else. And so when you are at the very top of your, or at any level of the industry, everyone is doing the same thing and is capable of providing the same result. The people who decided to sign up with me, now that works for me as a marketer, because that's my client avatar. They are subdividing into categories that work for each one of us. But ultimately, those people got better results working for me because it went back to 2 of the points that Craig made in his framework. One is rapport. Right? The people who worked with me on Monday mornings when they were, giving me their fitness check-ins for the weekend, the first thing would not be, I hit my macros. It would be, what do you think of Game of Thrones last night? And that rapport led to a greater level of connection and depth, which fed into the fifth point on Craig's list of somebody you deeply don't want to disappoint. And so people tend to self-select the coaches that are going to be best for them. And then unless there is some sort of personality disconnect or there's a methodology or delivery issue, that is the person who's going to get them the best results. Because as a business coach, or a fitness coach or whatever else, you're more or less teaching the same shit as your contemporaries. It's the way that you teach it and the people to whom you teach it that makes it different. So the people who are looking for coaches, that rapport, that connection, that stuff is very, very important. And, to Craig's point, the trucking person who hired him because he gets up at 5 every day, even though it's not specific to his industry, that means more. If whatever the reason is a valid reason.
We'd be remiss if we didn't take this time to thank our sponsors that allow us to reach you each and every week. The Coaches Council is powered by Canai Brands, a lab-tested, all-natural, pure hemp CBD company without the presence of THC. They encompass our passion for health, wellness, and fitness that we have on the Coaches Council. Visit canaibrands.com and at checkout, use the promo code COACHES20 to enhance your wellness journey. I want to touch on a point going all the way back to Pradeep and talking about setting his ego aside, because through this whole episode, we've talked about how coaches, mentors can help bring out that piece of us that we're searching for, can help elevate what we're doing to another level. But there's always this little voice inside our head holding us back saying, oh, people are going to think ill of me. It's maybe this isn't right for me, or they've got this sense of doubt. And I want to go through each of us here just really briefly, because each one of us are high performing. We are coaches, we are mentors, but we also have coaches and mentors, and understand that it's something that you do to evolve. So Pradeep, I'd love to hear one of your stories as to how it elevated you to another level. And then Craig will go to you, and then John will go to you.
In terms of a coach or mentor that I had?
Exactly. And knowing that being able just to set that ego aside and knowing you can show up truly who you are as your unapologetically authentic self and bring bring yourself and what you need to this individual, knowing that they're going to help you get there. And not that it's something that's wrong with you, not that something that you fell short or that you failed, but rather that it's something that's elevating you to another level.
Well, yeah, I'll share a story of a mentor that I had. He's probably one of the most profound mentors I've had throughout my years. And he helped me through the corporate world. So I was very driven. I was very task-oriented. I was known as a go-getter. I was the guy that kind of got stuff done and put on different divisions and projects. And during that period of time, I lost a sense of, you can say, my emotional side. Let's just put it that way, simply put. And this guy was a master. So we worked together very deeply in terms of the projects and the organizations and the divisions, because he was a master of people. I was a master of strategy and tactics and business. And so the two of us coming together, we actually made a very powerful team. But he kept harping on me. He said, Pradeep, you know what? You got to work on that emotional side, that people side a little bit more. But I was so driven and trying to get to that top and become a CEO that I kind of overlooked that. And it took him probably 2 years to break me down and really get through to me. And once I did, it was just kind of like a light went on, and just something inside of me switched, and my whole approach in terms of how I took a look at business and how I dealt with my employees and how I dealt with strategic partners and so forth just completely changed. And it became more holistic, you can say. And all I can say is it just allowed me to become a powerhouse in life and in business. So it took him time, it took him patience, and I have to thank him for this, because he stood by me for a couple of years. And I don't know where I would be if he wasn't around. I don't think I would be here. So I think the other part that the whole point there from a mentor's perspective is that, I'm thankful that he stood around and actually had the patience to stick around with me, because he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. So that for me was life-changing.
Awesome. And Craig, for you, the same thing. who have you had in your life? Where have you had to step in and say, you know what, I need to go see X person. I need to reach out to X person so that I can elevate what I'm doing to a whole nother level?
Well, the first coach that I hired was a guy named Tom, and it was really me setting my ego aside. I mean, it wasn't a money thing. I could have hired a coach years earlier, and it's probably one of the greatest regrets of my career was I wasted 3 years not getting coaching, because when I got coaching, it just, I got coaching from somebody who had been there, done that, achieved what I want to achieve, shares morals and ethics. Like the guy that I wanted to model my business success, I got coaching from, and he just downloaded everything. And, then I look back, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this sooner? Could have had much faster results. And then, the compounded over time, how many people would I be helping today if I had moved on that faster? So it was, I do still have a large ego, and that thing always gets in the way. But getting the first coach was the first step in being able to then continue to ask for coaches. And we, just had a meeting right before this, our planning meeting for the rest of this year. And we're like, I realized I was resisting hiring, or at least getting consultation from one organization and one individual, because my ego is in the way. And it was brought to light in the meeting. And now it's like, okay, it's clear what I have to go and do. And we're getting that set up already. So every time I screw up, it's because my ego gets in the way. But every time I succeed, it's because I let my ego off to the side and I go and get that coaching.
It's a powerful story. And for everybody listening, Pradeep said it earlier on, when you're searching for coaching, it is, exactly to Craig's point, setting that ego aside and truly allowing yourself to enter into a whole nother level of consciousness and education and knowledge that you can download and ultimately save yourself time and a lot of heartache along the way. John?
I have a great story from a good friend of mine who has long been a mentor from a distance, a guy named Tucker Max, who more or less created the literary genre called frat tire, which I guess is the sort of juvenile male response to chick lit, and he's an incredible writer and storyteller. I started reading his work when I was in college, and he now runs a company called Scribe Media. They help people write books in much the same way I do, although in a different way of applying the service. Tucker came and spoke at an event of mine in, I think, 2016 or 17 in Austin, Texas. And it was more of sort of a self-work event. And he talked about his experience finding a therapist and getting involved in psychotherapy and how much it had helped them. And he talked about the interview process for therapists and how he had seen a number of therapists for a few sessions and he just wasn't finding the right one. And Tucker, like me, is someone with a very, very strong ego structure. And he told this story about how he was sitting with this therapist, and it was maybe their fourth session, and the guy just called him out, and he said, look, clearly you think you're way smarter than me, and therefore, I can't help you. So I'm going to say you have to find someone who can. And that's what he did. And Tucker left, and he eventually found the psychotherapist who I think led him through about 2.5 years of therapy, and he made tremendous progress and then moved on to some other things. But that call out is tremendously important because it's not just setting your ego aside. In the case of certain people, there are ways your ego activates to keep you safe or to just be who you are. And in the case of people like Tucker and myself, who regard themselves as particularly intelligent or who are quantifiably that, it's really hard for me to get coaching from anyone who I don't think is smarter than me. And there's no way to say this without sounding like a complete asshole, but there aren't that many of those people running around who offer the type of coaching that I would need. And so I needed to eventually to find some of those people, and in particular, very, very specific skill sets. So one of my coaches was Neil Strauss, who I joined his society. I wasn't really interested in any of the stuff that master, it was like a 100-person mastermind that it was supporting, but I was like, I want to work with Neil. This guy is definitely smarter than me. He's a better writer than me, and I want to get better at that. And I was like, whatever, that worked really well for me. And one of the reasons I shut my mastermind down is because of ego, not my ego. But I found that because I was particularly coaching men, one of Craig's criteria was find someone who has done what you want to do, been there and done that. That is important, but it also brings up a number of problems. And one of these is that a lot of the people who hire you for coaching are people who, at least in my experience, want to become some version of you and do the thing you do in the way that. And so I would hire people who they needed to be in the student role to receive and to listen and to make the progress. But because they wanted to do what I was doing, there was this need of them to establish peerage rather than have the mentor student hierarchy. And that made it very difficult to coach them. And I noticed that whether it was what I was putting out in my content or simply where I was in my career, most of the clients I was attracting to that mastermind were men in their late 20s to early 30s who were trying to establish peerage with me. And it was a constant ego battle where I would tell them to do the thing, and then they would come up with other ideas and have other things that they wanted to do. And my own ego as a coach was getting in the way. And I was like, just do the fucking thing I told you. Just try that before you come back with other shit, which got very frustrating. And so I took a year off from coaching, and then I came back and I decided to mostly work with women because women have just generally an easier time sliding into the student role. All to say that it's not as simple as setting your ego aside unless you have a process for that, because you have to recognize the exact thing that is troubling you in that situation. I am very likely to hire someone who is good at a thing that I know very little about. It's very difficult for me to hire someone who is incrementally better or more successful at a thing that I think I'm already good at, because that's where my ego gets in the way. And it's just like, well, you're smarter than that person. You could just do that. And then I have to have the conversation with myself, like, well, if you could just do it, why don't you do it? And so I have to find the back door to my ego and tell myself, even if I don't learn anything from them, I'm paying them $20,000 to just get myself to do it, which will get me the result. And it'll be nice to have a friend along the way. And so egos are very, very tricky. It's not as simple as just setting your ego aside. All of the best mentors I've had are people who have been so far ahead of me that I didn't have the opportunity to convince myself that like there was that peerage. And so just as my mastermind students had done, I had talked myself into that as well. My very first mentor was a guy named Alvin Batista, who just happened to be the owner of the gym I first worked at and where I made my first body transformation. And he was very much a father figure to me. And everything that guy asked me to do, I did. To this day, if he called me up and said, I need you to run through a wall for me, I'd fucking do it. And like that level of not wanting to disappoint him is why everything I ever did with him was successful. And so as a mentor, I now try to figure out how I can help people work through whatever their ego shit is and show up for them in a way that is going to make them feel welcomed and authentic without feeling intimidated. As a student, because I to this day still need coaching, the best mentors have, for me, other than people who are so far are the ones who have been long dead. And I like teachers, which is to say people who are not super hands-on, people I don't have to check in with a lot. And most of those are dead. And so philosophy and spirituality and people who are writing along those lines, those are the areas where I most want to grow. And my respect for books and for writing and for literature is so great that if someone has taken the time to write a book about something, I immediately project onto them a level of credibility that I do not give people who haven't written books about that kind of shit. And so then I just read the book and I download it, and that helps me apply. So everybody is different. Everyone's ego will play different tricks on you. And if you have people around you, the way Craig does, to help him see through that, you can bring in the people who will help. And other times, it's not the exact right time. But the goal is always to find someone who you not just can learn from, but to whom you will listen. And that is often a differentiator.
So whether you're looking for a coach, a mentor, a teacher, or you're looking to be a better coach, mentor, or teacher, those 5 things that Craig was talking about, basically being able to have been there, done that, have those similar values, be able to have that respect for that person, have referrals, and ultimately be somebody that you do not want to disappoint. Those are the things that we can take literally or use in an inverse way if we are actually a coach, mentor, or teacher. With that, Rome, wrap it up, baby.
Whether you are looking to be the Dumbledore to someone's Harry, the Obi-Wan to someone's Luke Skywalker, or the Miyagi to someone's Danielson, coaching and mentorship is going to be an important role, not only in your success in business, whether you are on the receiving or giving end, but also it's a truly fulfilling role to play in your life as both the student and the teacher. And the biggest piece of value that you'll get is when you make the shift in your mind and realize that the truest level of fulfillment is not to be the Luke Skywalker of your own movie, but to be the Obi-Wan in someone else's.
With that, everybody, stay humble, stay hungry, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us for another week of the Coaches Council. If it wasn't for you viewers and listeners, we wouldn't have a platform. So again, it's all about you guys. And we want to give you a reward just for listening. We want to give you access to each one of our coaches for a little bit deeper, intimate experience. So if you go to coaches-council.com, coaches-council.com, subscribe and like to whatever platform you're viewing on, you're going to be entered to have that one-on-one experience. So be sure to go coaches-council.com and really interact with us, because we would love to interact with you. Until then, stay safe, stay hungry, stay humble, and thanks for listening.